Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk about the different, not the different, but I just want to talk about the old, tried and true WE G17. This is something that I've had for about over 10 years now, a little bit over more than 10 years ago. And not exactly this specific model per se, but you know, it's still a WE, and I kind of swap parts a little bit every now and then, so it's not quite the original piece. The original piece I still actually have, in case anyone was wondering about the polymer and how long it lasts. This is the original piece right here. I remember you used to be able to get it at either, I think it was EVIC you can get it. But anyway, you can buy it from them, and I remember they sold them as two different parts, like an upper part and a lower part. But this is the original part right here. Obviously some parts like this thing is not supposed to be this shiny because I broke it and I had to replace it. But here it is, you know, and a little scuffed up, still works. And it's just really held up. Now, not every part, I don't want to mislead people and say, hey, look, it's going to last forever. And I've put through about over 20,000 shots of these, and so I've had to replace some parts like the spring, the hammer spring, where it gets worn out and it just won't hit the magazine as hard, and it won't have the blowback action that you're looking for. But some parts it's my fault, where I dropped it when the slide was locked back to the rear, and it dented the slide lock release. The barrel, as many of you guys will know, that's a weak point in WE. See my other video I made about that concerning what I think is potentially the cause of that. But the original barrel is quite thin, and if you have extra stress on it, see the video, you'll know more about why it's an issue. And I remember that one actually broke after about 2,000 rounds. Pretty much right away. And so this one here uses the garter. I don't know if they even sell them anymore. It's the garter barrel, and so this one is much more durable, and it still gets loose and you have to twist it, screw it on before it falls off. But it's not, if you use thread tie, I'm sure it'll be fine. Anyway, this specific one, I noticed they don't, WE, you can get them kind of, they're not as common as they used to be, certainly online, but if you still go to your local airsoft shops, you can still get them. That's why I always try to go to your local shop. So there's one in Virginia, for example, that I happened to got this one from. And it's surprised they don't list their stuff on their website online, but on in person or in the store, they always have stuff that, you know, if you, it's like the sale that they have online or at the store. They go quickly, but they're always there. Well, not always, but sometimes. So pay your local shop a visit. I'm sure they would appreciate the business too. Anyway, this specific model, I did some more research, and this actually happens to be, it fits with WE parts, so all the parts in this one fits with this one right here, the original WE. But I've noticed that this one has like the, it has different markings on the side, which is very rare, and I don't think they actually make these anymore, but it's all called the HK3 or H3K or something like that. Very awesome. And this one, actually, it's funny because I bought this and I thought this was supposed to be the Gen 4 because I didn't know any better, and I guess it's not, it's a Gen 3. So the Gen 4 actually has, this is a Elite Force model right here, but this has different texturing. But anyway, it still fits on the original WE. As you can tell, the right side and the left side is different. I want to point out though that I wish they still made it, the Elite Force still made it, because this is the original, HK3 model or H3K, where it actually has like the manufacturer location and everything like that right here, whereas on the original WE kind of has this like made in like Taiwan and the WE kind of marking from the side. This type of marking is really only found on the original Stark Arms model, like this one right here, which is very, very unique and very old, and I don't think they even exist anymore. I don't know why they stopped making them, but they were very popular back in like 2013 or 14 or 15, around that range. I think what happened is they end up being, I'm not sure if bought out is the word, but they converted, and now it's basically made by Elite Force under like the license of Cybergun or something like that, where they still make it. Everything in terms of like the specs and stuff like that is the same in terms of designing everything, except with the exception of the side where it says like officially licensed, like product of Glock. I don't know why they chose that. That's like a silly thing to put in there. They should have just went with the original content that they made back then. So I don't know. It's kind of, there's a lot of history behind this, and so personally I liked how this one, or sorry, this WE like version right here stacks up nicely to that. All right, so that's enough about the outer markings of it. But let me talk a little bit more about the trades, or not trades, the function of it. Again, over 20,000 shots. The nozzle, the loading nozzle on the inside has never cracked on me. Sometimes, you know, there's an issue of quality control in which WE has parts that don't hold up and they break pretty quickly. I happen to have been lucky, and I got one that works out well. So I think if it does break on you, it's a pretty simple fix and a replacement, so it's not that big of an issue. Again, both of these models has not broke on me yet, and so it's really good. FPS wise, it's still kicking the same as it used to. It depends on the magazine you use, however. If you use like the plastic one, of course, I made several videos on that in the past about how the magazine wise, like if you use like the plastic ones, you know, it's going to be a little bit lower FPS at first, but then it's going to start dropping down faster because of the cool down effect and how the plastic insulates it. The original magazine that comes with it can push it out about 330 around there, and it still does to this day. That's one of the advantages of these GBEs, this gas blowback model, in the sense that you know, the FPS it was performing at day one is basically the same FPS it's going to be performing, you know, 20,000 rounds later. It's different, you know, with AEGs, like the electric ones, they have the spring that condenses or whatever, and you can lose FPS over time, where with these, as long as you keep them oiled, you know, there are other things that you have to worry about, but in terms of just the FPS, day one, day two, or day, you know, whatever, 10 years later, still doing the same. The spring, I will mark, I don't know if this was my fault or not. As far as the hammer spring, that's the little spring that is for the hammer. It wore out on me in the sense that, like, it became too weak, and every time when you pulled the trigger, like, it barely had enough force to hit the magazine to fire, and as a result, it barely would blow back because there's not enough gas was leaving. And so it definitely would not lock back on the last shot. And as it turns out, you know, I wonder if it was because I had kept it in the locked or cocked position for so long. I remember I had it for about, I think it was 3 years, where I had it constantly like locked back, not locked back like this, but like in the cocked position. So right now, right, that's the decocked position, even though the trigger's still forward, but the hammer's released. If you were to pull it back, right, and let me just show you. So right now the hammer's in a down position, right, and I had that for years like that, and so after about 4 years or so, I noticed I had to change it. Ever since then, basically, when I store it or stow it, whatever the word is, I leave it in this position where it's up like this, so it's not putting stress on it. Some people say it's a myth that it's not the compression that causes damage or wear and tear on the spring. It's more of the motion of going back and forth. In my opinion, I don't know. This is just my opinion of it. I leave it stored like this, and so I think it's pretty nice. And it's, ever since then, I haven't had to replace it anymore. But again, if you want to put the slide back onto the, you have to make sure you keep that part down. Anyway, there you go. And then so some people everyone probably knows the little safety thing on the WE right here. Some people aren't a fan of that. I mean, it looks okay to me. It's not a big deal. Whereas like something more like the Elite Force uses a plate with an actual serial number right here. Keep in mind that this actually fell out for me after a while, because the recoil on this model, or the Umarex or VFC or Stark Arms, whatever you want to call it, this particular model, the more recent one and the one that you can get readily available online nowadays by Cybergun. I'm sorry if I get the names wrong, but this does tend to have a tendency to fall off, whereas this is embedded in, so it won't fall off. So I actually have to glue it back on to keep that plate there. On the other hand, something like the G19 model, they use more of a system where it's kind of like locked into place, so it's not glue, it's kind of like latched in there. So on the same Stark Arms model here, again, it doesn't really matter, these don't even exist anymore. They're locked on there, so it doesn't fall out here, which is really nice. Oh, and by the way, I just want to point out, just this thing, even though the original one, if you buy any WE, they use the same metal material for the barrel, and there is no difference between the metal barrel on the Elite Force nowadays or the plastic one. Because I've been running this one this is a plastic one and this is a metal one, and none of them has had any issues. Granted, I haven't put through like 20,000 through this model or any of these. I think I put through about maybe 6 or 7 with this one, and maybe about 3 or 4 with this one, 1,000. But still, it hasn't, you know, snapped clear off yet, you know, like it did with this one. Now, I had to see that video again. I had a theory about why it is. I have changed the way I've handled them, and so it kind of helped out a little bit more. In terms of the trigger for it, is an interesting thing to note that if you were to store it, I don't know if this matters or not, if you were to cock this one back, notice how the trigger stays forward this, right? But if you were to decock it, right, like that, it stays locked back to the rear. Now, when you do that, it puts a lot of stress on the spring because it stretches it out, and so I kind of like to pull it back just a tad bit like that to keep it pushed to the forward, but at the same time not have the hammer in the back spring being locked down. The WE, however, you don't need to worry about that, at least for the G17 model. I know it's different for the different generation of WEs, but if you were to, like this is locked back right now, the hammer springs down, triggers forward, pull it forward, and you release the hammer in the back, but the trigger still stays forward. So you don't have to worry about the spring tension or the trigger spring being stretched out. So easy for storage. You don't have to do that little extra like half a inch or half a centimeter pull back to release it. I know a lot of people complain about the holsters and how this one doesn't fit because it's a little bit too wide. There are ways and remedy that, but for the most part, I don't think it's an issue. Because I don't use holsters. These are more collector pieces, and so you can tell there's some wear and tear on the edges, the paint, where it comes off. Because that's how I do. I pick it up, leave it on the floor or on the table like that. On the right side, it looks like this. But not bad. The original one, a little bit less because I use this one a little bit more. But this time, this piece is just kind of a museum piece at this point. It's like this is like the first GBB model I ever had, and I just thought it was the coolest. And to this day, I still think it's cool. It still locks back and everything like that. Magazine-wise, of course, that's where it gets a little bit. Over time, of course, they will leak. You know, I don't have one right now with me in front of me, but over time they will leak eventually. But they're easy fixes. You can just replace the O-rings. They use standard the circular ones. They're not proprietary, and so they're very easy to replace. Just get some calipers. I might make a video. I think I might have already made a video on like the different O-rings, but if not, I might just update a new one about that. I noticed that there is a tendency for the WEs to leak a little bit more, but again, that's just totally random because I have the plastic ones who've never leaked, and then I have like the metal ones who magazines that seem to have leaked a little bit more. Not a big deal. In terms of winter performance, of course, you know, you got your typical concerns to the winter, but overall, not bad at all. So I guess I kind of want to address, you know, is this thing still relevant today, because I know like VFC has done so much. They listen to the people. They come out with the models that people like. I think with VFC or Umarex, they kind of do everything in which people like, and that seems to be like they are like the in crew right now. So I don't know if that's, you know, going to change anytime soon or not, but they are definitely what's in, and I think they're everywhere, and for good reason too. But that doesn't mean that if you go to your local store and you see like a cheaper version, like if your local store sells a WE model, they're not obsolete, is what I'm trying to say. This is something that's been tried and true. They still work. Again, there's some fitment issues, holsters, unlike this one. This one they've addressed that issue. Same with the VFC model. This happens to be a Tokyo Marui, by the way, in case anyone's wondering. But I think, you know, they've done a really solid job, and to this day it still holds up. So I guess that's all I want to talk about. Like this isn't like sort of an in-depth review. It's just kind of talk about how it holds up over the years, especially those who ask. I know those beginners who want to get into the sport, and they see like, wow, these are like, you know, $100, and it's like, is it worth it, the investment? And trust me, I was there not too long ago. I remember I was saving up all my lunch money to buy, and it took me like months before I can get one. Didn't eat like lunch for like a while, but anyway, not a good idea. But anyway, I remember how expensive it was to get one, and when you spend that much money on something, you want to make sure, is it going to last? So my advice is, yes, there's a risk that with the quality controls of WE, some parts can break on you, right? But you can always get replacements for those parts, and who knows, you might get lucky and you might get parts that aren't lemons, and they'll last longer. In this situation, eventually though, something will have to be replaced, whether it's the hammer spring, maybe that trick I told you about maybe can help it last longer, maybe it's the barrel, maybe the video that you can watch that I made can help with the barrel issue. I haven't had it with my other models so far, so again, watch that video, see what you think. But again, that's kind of an easy replacement for the most part. Yeah, ever since then, you know, if you take good care of it, you don't drop it on the floor or anything like that, I think it's there to last, with minor exception. And keep in mind that, you know, these aren't meant to, I've had this for a little bit more than 10 years. I mean, I guess if you count both of these together. Oh, sorry, I totally forgot. I also have to change the, after, I don't know, several thousand rounds, I have to change the hop up on this thing. And it was just shredded because it was just so torn up. So that is a normal wear and tear part that you need to know how to replace over time, and of course tighten some of the bolts down a little bit better. But again, you know, if you think about a real model, like if you bought a real Glock, right? You know, if someone was to put through 5,000 rounds, they do reviews on it and they say, hey, it still works. So keep in mind that, you know, if a real model can only, I mean, obviously the pressure of a real one is much higher and the stress on it's different, right? But think about it, right? If the real one can hold up after 5,000 rounds and people are like saying, hey, it's still good and it's still wear and tear, maybe some parts need to be replaced, right? Imagine the same situation for an airsoft model, right? If you have to replace some parts after 5,000 rounds, that's just part of the hobby, right? That's part of the cost of maintenance on it, right? So, you know, in my opinion, I think it's still worth it if you see one at your local shop, or anything like that, that's still worth it to buy. So, not to say that this is not worth it to buy, because this is definitely more, the VFC, or sorry, the Umarex models are more expensive, you know, but they are different, and the recoil on this, I will say, is way better than the recoil on this, but it's still not bad. The W is still not bad, but VFC, man, they know what's going on and they know how to do it. Little note though, it just kind of bothers me that this one is a little bit of a gap between the slide and the frame. It should be more closed like this, but whereas on none of the WE models have that problem. So And I do distinctively remember that when Stark Arms were making them, people bought the G19, like this one right here, and they liked it right here, but they noticed that the G17 version by Stark Arms at that time still had that crack. Fast forward, 5 years, 6 years later, they still have the same thing. So that's why, one of the reasons why I think that this is the same thing as a VFC or Stark Arms model. They're all just different names on it. So I think that's kind of the big ticket items for now, it's not, again, not a full review, but I hope you guys kind of like this update after about 10 years. That's right, 10 years of this model. Oh yeah, and of course it was propane, always propane on this, so that full tilt propane for this. I think that's about it, hope you guys enjoy the content, and let me know what you guys think about WE, and if it's still, in your opinion, relevant in today's market in the world of airsoft, or has been largely replaced by something that's more established, like the VFC or Umarex model here. Leave your thoughts below, or comments, well, your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks a lot, guys. See you next time.